you in the call. Would you want to start us off, or do we go straight to Suzanne? I see her there too.
Good
Welcome,
afternoon.
everybody.
Good afternoon, Councilor Paniagua. Good afternoon, President Hartson, members of the Common Council, City Auditor Maroon. I want to thank Commissioner Barnett and Romeo for joining us this afternoon to present to you the budget from the Syracuse City School District. This is my fifth budget as superintendent of the Syracuse City School District that we will be presenting to you today. I would like for Chief Slack to get the PowerPoint presentation going. And thank you. If you can click, Suzanne. Again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to share some of the success that we have had in the Syracuse City School District last year, especially with the student graduation at the high school level. As you know, we have been facing a pandemic all over the world. And last year, the State Education Department canceled the ELA and the math, as well as the Regents exams for the students in New York State. So we are going to share the graduation rate. We're going to share with you the increasing in-person program that we began on April 12th. Then Suzanne is going to talk about the 2021-22 general fund budget and the federal stimulus funds that will be available to the district. When we look at the graduation rate, and this is the only indicator again that we had available from last year, we are celebrating. We celebrated that the graduation rate in the Syracuse City School District went up to 70.7%. This is the highest graduation rate that we have had in the district through the last 20 years. When we look at each individually school in the district, again, as a district, 70.7 graduation rate. Corcoran High School, we saw another increase in graduation to 77.6. PSLA at Fowler obtained the highest graduation rate in many, many years at the school, so 69.6. Henninger went down a little to 61.1. ITC, our first technical CTE school, they achieved a 97.3, and Nottingham High School also went up to 69.9%. When we look at the data, the disaggregated data by subgroups, the economically disadvantaged students went up from 61 to 65%. Our English language learners, ENL students, went from 39 to 58%. Our formerly English language learners, and these are the students that they have been with us, but they don't need the ENL services any longer. They were at 94% the previous year. Last year, almost all the kids, 99%, graduated. When we look at the special ed students with disabilities, we saw an increase from 44 to 49%. This is an area, even though that we're making progress, we continue to work with our students, to work with our staff, so we can see an increase this coming year also. When we look by gender, we see that our female student obtained a 75% graduation, and our male 67. So our female students are graduating at a higher percentage than our male students. When we look by race, we see that the American Indian, this is a very small group of students in the district. Their percentage is 59%. There was an increase there. The Asian Pacific students, again, we saw an increase there from 75 to 80%. Our Black students, we saw an increase of 7% there from 64 to 71%. Our Hispanic students, we went from 59 to 70%. This is one of the highest percentage for the Latino Hispanic students in the district. The multiracial went up only 1%, and our white students went from 65 to 69%. So if you look at all the subgroup together, you can see that we have eliminated the graduation gap in our students, that they are all, almost all of them, between 60 to 70% of the students graduating. So we are happy with the work that our teachers, our students, and our families are doing, because graduating a student from high school is not only the job of our staff and the Syracuse City School District, it's a collaboration between the staff, the students, the parents, and the community. So this is team work. When we compare with the other Big Five school district, Buffalo achieved a 76.3%, New York City 78.8%, Rochester 68.2%. We were at 70.7%, so we were a little higher than Rochester, and Yonkers at 90.6%. So in New York State, all public and school graduates are 84. So we are making progress and working hard to be at the same level with the state, or to continue to supersede the other Big Five school districts. That's my goal and our goal. So in summary, for the graduation rate, the Syracuse City School District saw an increase of 6.2% and is now above 70%. PSLA at Fowler obtained 23.7 percentage points, again, 20 points higher than all three previous years. The ENL students, the ELL graduation is up 19%, and the Hispanic graduation rate is up 11%. So we are very happy to see that our graduation rate continue to increase.
Superintendent, have we been
Yes.
able to sustain these numbers in the consecutive years, like to 2019? I'm sure last year was different, but did we sustain this?
Last year was different. This is the highest number. The next numbers will be announced this coming or next coming January for the class that will be graduating this year, the 2021 class. Information that we have so far is showing that our kids, the seniors, are still engaged, and that we are going to see another increase in the graduation rate in the Syracuse City School District. So we'll continue to work hard. We'll continue to work to track our kids and provide the support that they need, so we can continue to celebrate a higher graduation rate in the city of Syracuse. So Monday, April 12th, we began to increase in-person instruction in the Syracuse City School District. We had been doing hybrid instructions since last October, and with the number of positive cases in the city and in the county, and based on the guidance that we received from the CDC, from the county, and from the New York State Health Department, reducing the distance for students in the classroom from 6 feet to 3 feet, we were able to accommodate more students in the classroom. So we have increased the number of students attending school in person. And I shared some of this information with the Education Subcommittee before. Next. Before we began to increase the in-person, we again rearranged the furniture in the classroom to make sure that we kept the new social distancing of 3 feet, that it was recommended by the county first, and then by the New York State Health Department and the CDC. We ordered 15,000 additional partitions, even though the New York Health Department and the CDC recommended that we did not need those partitions. We wanted to make sure that our parents felt comfortable sending the kids to school, that our staff also felt comfortable. So we are still using those partitions in every classroom in the district. We also ordered 15,000 face shields. We secured 33,175 masks for students and 49,000 for staff. We order 270 new wrist and forehead thermometers. I mean, we have concern from some of the parents that they didn't want their kids to be, the temperature of their kid to be taken on the forehead. So we are doing it on the wrist. We label the floor to keep the social distance. We install water bottle fillers. We're just finishing the last 2 or 3, I believe. And we also put office partition in all the buildings. And taking into consideration the health and safety of our students and our staff, we have air purifiers in all the classrooms in the district. We have 2 in every classroom. We continue to monitor the heating and ventilation and the air conditioning in our buildings. We're bringing in more fresh air during the day and in the evening. We submitted a new pandemic response plan to the state for next year. And we submitted or we distributed 2 weeks supplies of PPE to each school before we open or before we increase the in-person participation. Our HR department has the Care About You mental health campaign, and we're doing workshop for parents, workshop for students, workshop for our staff, and providing some extra support. And we have the social emotional support plans for our students. Every day, we do social emotional lessons with all the students in the district, whether they're in person or they're remote. Our staff continue to facilitate these discussions. We want to hear from the kids. We want to hear from the staff. So if we feel that they need some extra support with the trauma and everything that is happening, our staff, our counselors, our social workers are ready to support our kids. In order to bring the kids back and to increase the in-person instruction, we needed to get feedback from the stakeholders. So I had meetings with the union presidents. I had meetings with the building principals. I had a co-video chat with parents where we had more than 600 parents that participated in the sessions. We also had a question and answer sessions, and we were able to answer the questions of the staff. And I want to thank our family engagement department, Chief Williams, and the family engagement facilitators. They helped facilitate this session. I had a meeting with the superintendent teacher advisory committee. I met with 50 teachers Zoom to get feedback from them. We incorporated feedback from the Syracuse Teachers Associations and also from the student cabinet. And we also had a survey that was sent to the parents, and we received 11,913 responses from our families.
Okay,
So
can I ask a question before you continue to go on?
Yes, President Hudson, yes.
Okay, we talk about everybody being a team on educating and working with our kids, okay? And I understand that you have some great workers in the school as far as the social workers and the mental health. But we've talked about this before because we have folks in our community that I've said before can actually reach out and maybe touch some of the kids that other folks can't touch. Are we still working to figure out how to incorporate these community ambassador volunteers into this process?
Yes, President Hudson. We continue to work with community agencies. We continue to work with the county to provide those services. Now that the infection rate has gone down, we are opening doors to have other people coming into the building to support our kids. So we have participated in other meetings throughout the community, sharing the information. But we would like to continue to have that partnership. Like I said before, it is not only our responsibility, it's all the whole community that we need to work together to educate our kids. I appreciate the support that I have received, especially from the community in some cases where we have had some trauma, some violence going into the community. So we appreciate their support and that they're always willing to support our students and our families.
Thank you.
You're welcome. from pre-K to fifth grade, we have in-person 5 days a week, keeping the 3 feet distance in the classroom, assigning seating and partition to all the students. The day is from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The teacher's day is from 7:45 to 2:45, except to school that they have an extended day learning time program. And we are providing some extra support and contact with the kids in tiers 2 and 3. So we're making phone calls, we're getting in contact with them to make sure that they're getting the support and they're doing their academic work. Grades 6 through 8, we are doing in-person instruction 4 days a week. Students at the middle level and high school level, most of them prefer to do remote instruction. So on Wednesday, we're doing remote with all the students. We are developing the lessons and doing the professional development with our teachers so we can continue to have the demo teachers work with all the staff. We have the student days from 8:45 to 12:45, and then remote from 1:50 to 3:40 in the afternoon. Again, the physical distance in the classroom is 3 feet, assigned seating, barriers, and again, continue to provide the students who are doing remote with the lessons on Wednesday. Meals are available for all the kids that are in person or that they are coming into the school to get meals for the week at home. At the high school level, we're doing in-person twice a week. We are implementing a semester schedule. I can tell you that for the first semester, we had more kids graduating in January than we ever had before. So we're excited, and that's why we believe that we will see an increase in graduation rate. The highest number of kids at the high school level, they prefer to remain doing remote instruction. We're doing a Monday and Thursday or a Tuesday and Friday session, except for ENL students and special education students that they're attending school 4 days a week. We are continuing to support our kids. We're continuing to support our staff, and we want to make sure that they are getting the academic support that they are needing to be successful this year. Also at the high school level, meals are also provided for the student in person or that they take with them at the end of the day, or if they want to come in on Wednesday to pick up meals for the week, also those are available for them. So when we look at the change of the numbers, February 1st, we have 4,347 students at the elementary level that they were competing hybrid. April 12th, we have 6,078, so we have more than 1,000 students. I can tell you that the kids were happy, the students, the staff was happy, but the parents were more happy that the kids were in school 5 days. At the middle level, we saw an increase from 805, from 2,095 to 2,900 kids. And at the high school level, from 2,743 to 3,034. So if you see the percentages, our high school kids, that was the lowest percentage of kids that chose to be in person in school. When we look at sorry.
Let me ask you one question. Are the high school kids, students, required to be on video so that they're actually in front of the computer doing
Their
their
attendance is taken every day for every class that they're participating.
but during the day, are they required to have their videos on?
We have not mandated that because some of our kids, they're working from different places at home. So we want to take that into consideration. But there is
Okay.
contact between the teachers and the students.
Okay, thank you.
So far, we have distributed this last year by the end of the pandemic, 553,000 breakfasts and 615,000 lunches for 1.1 total meals. this year so far, we have provided our students with 687,000 breakfasts and 656,000 lunches for 1.3 meals. So during this pandemic, we have provided our students with 2.5 meals, whether it's breakfast and lunch. So I want to thank our food service department, our food service staff, that they are committed, that whether students were there in person or not, they were coming to work every day to make sure that our students were fed every day. Next. I believe that's my part, Suzanne. Now, thank you. Any question for me before Suzanne?
Yes, yes. May I, Councilor Paniagua?
Absolutely.
Just a clarification, Superintendent. So you spoke of the grades of the high school student and the graduation rate all increasing. How is the grades also for the first grade through 8th? Have that increased at all throughout the pandemic?
We saw our students doing work. We promoted kids from one grade level to the next, but it's not like what we do with graduation rate. Graduation is the kids that are completing the 22 credits, that are completing the Regents exams that were offered before the pandemic. So at the elementary and middle school level is promotion from one grade level to the next grade level. So this year, we have seen a lot of kids that are working. A lot of kids were promoted last year. We're working with families already this year because they are requesting for some of the kids to be retained. But it is, we don't have the final year numbers yet.
Okay, and would that final year numbers would reflect the metric as to how they are promoted?
Last year?
So I'm saying, would that final numbers reflect how the student are promoted? Because what I'm hearing is, rather than giving a child a grade, there's a different way where you do an assessment, not based on a grade. Is it grade point average? That's what I'm talking about.
No, we're still doing the grade point average. Last year, we gave incomplete for the work that was not completed. So we gave the student a specific amount of time to make up the work. We're doing the same thing this year for each marking period. But at the end of the course, if the students are not completing and making up the work, they fail the class. But we're giving them the opportunity to make up all the work.
Okay. With that, I want to know, in terms of high school, is there in any lesson that you have learned in terms of graduation? Because from what I heard, it seemed like the graduation rate has increased. Is that has to do with the fact that ELA and regions were canceled, or were there other factors that increased the graduation?
Counselor, I have to give credit to our kids. All the kids who graduated from the district last year, they completed the 22 credits that were required by New York State for graduation. Yes, the ELA exam is given at the 11th grade. So most of our kids, they already have taken the Regents exams last year. So I'm not going to deny that there might be some that did not have to take the test because it wasn't given. But most of our kids, they all had the 22 credit, and most of them already have taken the Regents exams.
When I'm asking that, Superintendent, I'm not taking away the credit where the kids have worked hard. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm asking is does the ELA and region exam has anything to do with the facts that more kids were graduating, considering that this pandemic, where there should be issues, but positively and greatly, our kids are excelling. What are some of the learned lessons here that the district can take forward considering that with pandemic and with all these hurdles that the kids were supposed to experience, but instead they have excelled and they have graduated more. What were some of the things that could be taken forward and mandated to help this kid move forward? What were some of those learned lessons?
We provided a lot of academic support last year for the kids so they can finish all the work that they were missing. So we have short weeks in during the April break. We provided some extra support for our kids. We provided extra support to complete all the work during the time that they were supposed to be taking the Regents exams that were canceled. We also provided the summer school program and extra support during the summer. So if we work with our kids, if we stay in contact with them and provide the support that they need, they will raise to education, and our kids completed the work, completed the credit that they needed. So one of the things that worked for a lot of the kids was that we were doing the remote instruction. Some kids were focused on doing that work during the day, but some of the kids were doing that work in the evening. Some of the kids were doing that work later on at night. So kids had the opportunity, because they were not sitting in front of the teacher all the time, to make up the work that they were missing.
So how important is that moving forward, considering that it's some of this stuff that the COVID has introduced have actually worked for our kids? How does that get sustained moving forward?
We are planning for the following year, for the 21-22 school year, and we know we are listening to our parents, and they're requesting to continue with remote instruction also for some students next year. So we're working on developing a program that will meet the needs of the kids next year, continue to provide remote instruction for our students.
I would love to see that plan, Superintendent. Really, I would really like to see it, because for your credit and for all the staff in the district and for everyone that is involved in this process, it's a tremendous amount of work for what was presented to you, your staff, and all your team in the district. Yet you pull it out. I think I would like to see some written plan into how we move forward to sustain this process.
And we are working on that plan. Again, we already submitted one to the state regarding dealing with pandemic or the health, but we're also working on developing a plan for remote instruction. We're waiting for more guidance from the New York State Education Department, and we hope that we will continue to provide the devices, the connectivity, and to continue to provide remote instruction to our kids.
Thank you.
Will they have to keep a grade point average to be able to continue to do the learning remotely, or does that not matter?
No.
All right. Thank you, Jaime.
Okay, ready to move on to the budget?
Yes.
Okay. So first I wanted to take a quick walk through what has changed in our revenue between the proposed budget, which you have in your large budget book, and the final adopted budget, which we just shared with your offices earlier this week. So this first column shows proposed budget and the second is the adopted. So initially, when we put together our budget plan, foundation aid from the governor's state aid run was going to be flat at $288 million. In the final state aid that came out in April, we actually received an increase of over $19 million in foundation aid. And in the legislation, there is a longer term plan to fully fund foundation aid over the next 2 years, which would be about another $17 million we would expect as increases over the next 2 years. That is subject to future budget approval, but certainly something that we are looking forward to. In addition to that, there's a bunch of other aid categories that are on top of foundation aid. Those went down about $11.7 million, and that's because in our proposed budget, we had asked for an additional 12.7 that we did not get in other aid. We actually received it in the foundation aid above, and there was a reduction of $1 million of a charter school supplemental tuition aid. So the net was a reduction of 11.7. And then the governor had put, interestingly, he put STAR into his state budget for the first time and did a reduction called the local district funding adjustment, which would have reduced our overall aid by $7.4 million this year and each year going forward. That got pulled out or rejected from the final state budget. So that gives us a bit of an increase as well of 7.4. So net, our state aid will be $384.8 million, which is about 15 million more than what we had initially in our proposed budget. Are there any questions on that part?
Does the foundation, I forget this information, does the foundation aid come to you quarterly or does it come all together?
Oh, later. So we
Late,
get,
okay.
yeah, we actually receive a significant amount in December and then March and again in June. So we get a little bit before December, but the primary payments begin in December for foundation aid.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then also when we had put together our proposed budget, we had learned about the second stimulus package, the CRSA or SRSA, as you may hear it called. And there's an allocation of about $48 million of that funding available for Syracuse. We had included using 35 of the 48 in our original proposed budget. We have gotten information since then that they're going to pull it out of the general fund, so that will go over and be treated as a grant. So you'll see here that it's pulled out completely from our general fund budget, that reduction of 35 million. On our school taxes, we had put in a request for an increase of the tax rate to 17.4, which it was 2 years ago. That did not go through in the mayor's budget, but the increased assessed values did flow through. So although that's an increase year over year of $500,000, it's actually a reduction from what we had requested in the proposed budget. All other revenues, which are small things like permits for folks using our buildings or interest earnings, those were flat between the two versions of the budget. So our final budget revenue will be $460.2 million, which is a reduction of about $20 million, $21 million from what we had initially proposed. I do want to point out that included in all of our state aid is $31.7 million of the Chapter 1 accrual. You may recall this from years past. Each year we advance $31.7 million into our budget from next year into the current year in order to balance the budget. And we also are still repaying from the early 2000s a lottery aid spin-up. So each year $1 million is reduced from our state aid to pay back that debt, which will be completed in 2036. So essentially this budget, balanced as it is with the additional state aid, does include using about $45 million of advanced state aid. So I just want to put a bit of caution out there for everybody to be aware of. This is, this blue line shows you what the actual state aid for the school district is historically. And the yellow line is the foundation aid as it's calculated. So for example, in 2021, we were supposed to receive 333 million of foundation aid, but we really received 288 million. So this is when you hear people talk about the broken promise or the phase in. And as you can see, the amount was going up a little bit year after year. Obviously, it was frozen last year for COVID. So with the final state budget this year, it came up to 307 million, which we did not expect. We're at about 92% of the full foundation phase-in amount. So what I'm projecting here is that kind of increase that I talked about that's in the state budget. It does have to be voted on again in each of the subsequent budgets, but if it passes, we would expect to reach at least this $335 million mark. It's recalculated each year based on factors, so it could go up. But right now, we don't know exactly what that could be. So just wanted to point out that there is a little bit of caution in our current projections, as well as the future year projections for state aid.
So Susan, why are you using 45 million in advance aid versus federal funds?
So we advance these aids each year. So the lottery aid spin up, the way it worked back in the early 2000s, I think there were 3 different years that the district did a lottery aid spin up. And what happens is, in total, it was about $30 million. You are able to advance that money into the current year to balance your budget. So we advanced $30 million into prior years to balance the budget. And the way that it gets paid back is like an interest-free loan. So it comes out in 1/30th increments each year. So that will be paid off in 2036 and it's interest-free. You can't pay it back sooner. And it's an option that's available to school districts.
Okay.
On the Chapter 1 accrual, by advancing the Chapter 1 accrual, which again is allowable in legislation, there's a couple of really big benefits to that. So you do get the money earlier, which results in us borrowing less money each year. So you know that I come to you in August and say, we need to borrow money this year to pay payroll in September. When we first did this Chapter 1 accrual, we went from borrowing 50 to 60 million down to borrowing about 30 to 35 million. It changes every year based on other factors, but this was a huge benefit in terms of cash flow for the school district. Although we probably don't need to do it or all of it in the coming year, I really think that we should do it because it shows the state that we still rely on this money. And each year when they vote on the budget, we don't want to put this at risk so that if we need it desperately in a future year, we would still have that option available.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted to take just a minute to talk about some of the investments that are in this year's budget. We are continuing the phase-in of turnaround for 3 of our schools, STEAM at Dr. King, Syracuse STEM at Blodgett, and Brighton Academy. So we are continuing the turnaround efforts in those 3 schools. We're adding the expeditionary learning model at Oasis, McKinley, Brighton, and McCarthy schools. Continuing the expansion of the Syracuse Latin to 8th grade, which will complete that transition K through 8. We are continuing Montessori through age 9, which is at Lemoyne School on the north side. And then AVID in primary years and middle years International Baccalaureate at a number of schools. We've also increased support for our English language learners. We are very hopeful that with the new federal administration, the borders will open up and we will again start to see an influx of English language learners and their families coming to Syracuse. So we are preparing for that. We're increasing the offering of world languages by adding additional French and sign language, which was at a request of our students. And we have added some additional parent liaison support to continue the co-video chats in Parent University. I know the superintendent mentioned earlier, part of getting community input on reopening schools was through information sessions on co-video chats, and they've been very successful. So we want to make sure that we're able to continue those next year. In addition to that, we are restoring our co-curricular activities. So fine arts, drama productions, theater productions, and athletics. We are restoring field trips and field experiences. We had cut those out of the budget last year, and we're hopeful that kids will be able to return to in-person, but if not, we'll have funding available for virtual field trips as well. We've added some staff to IT or shared accountability. In a few minutes, we're going to talk about the number of devices that have been rolled out and what we're planning to do in the coming year. So we do need additional staff and support to manage all of the additional laptops, tablets, and Wi-Fi hotspots that are distributed to both students and staff in the district. We also need to keep an eye on enhancing our cybersecurity efforts. I don't know if you've read a lot in the paper this year, many municipalities and school districts have suffered cyber attacks. So we are continuing to increase security. We're continuing the investments that the superintendent mentioned to maintain safe and healthy schools, including all of the PPE you could ever want in any size that you would like it in. the barriers that we have available in the classrooms, continuing with improving air quality efforts throughout the schools. In addition to that, we've added a few analyst and support positions to comply with the increased mandates that we have now, and continued planning for the regional STEAM high school. So we are on track with meeting with folks on the lease for that program to make sure that that rolls forward. We've included a number of infrastructure upgrades with capital projects through the Capital Projects Fund that are planned for next year. And we are continuing with JSCB Phase 2. I'm happy to say we have finished all of the debt borrowing for JSCB, so the funds are all available, and we are now winding down the last few projects of Phase 2. And then we recently completed participatory budgeting at 7 schools. We're rolling it out to 3 additional schools next year. This is a process where the community members get an allotment of money. They come together, come up with proposals of how to spend it, and then actually vote on it, and we implement the recommendations. So we are going to roll that out to more of our schools next year and actually include it in the civics curriculum for our high school students.
Will any of the federal $8 be able to be allocated to capital projects, or that's a different?
I'm going to go over that in just a minute, but in a
Okay.
limited capacity, yes, they can.
Okay.
Yes. So with all those additional investments, we end up balancing our budget at $460.3 million. The majority of that obviously is in salaries and benefits, which are down quite a bit from the proposed budget as a result of positions moving to those federal dollars that we're going to be talking about in just a minute. Professional services are down for the same reason. Transportation, we are anticipating full transportation expenses next year. We'll have to keep an eye on that depending on kids that do remain remote if we have the reduction in transportation as a result of that. Our charter school tuition is going to go up slightly. We are anticipating additional students at some of the charter schools because they're continuing to roll up grade levels, and the tuition rate is expected to go up slightly for next year. Any questions on the spending in the budget? Okay, so I did want to take a few minutes yes.
Help me understand, what is interfund? What is that?
Interfund?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great question. That is, when we put our budget together, it's the general fund budget. We also have other funds. For example, capital projects is a fund, JSCB is a fund, federal grants are on a different fund, and the money flows through the general fund and then feeds those programs. So at the end of the year, there is an amount that ends up being an expense to the district, and most of what that is the matching that's required for pre-K that's in the grant funds, and some of the transitions that we have for expenses in the capital project fund.
And the state match that with the federal?
No. So the district is responsible for matching when it's required on a grant. So some grants will say, for every dollar spent on this grant, the district has to invest 20 cents or 5 cents in addition to support special needs or pre-K or other particular programs.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Suzanne, can I ask a quick question on this?
Absolutely.
Sure. So going back to what you were saying earlier about the request to have the tax rate restored to the local property taxes, how much revenue would that have been? And then what would have been the plan? What would you plan to spend that on?
So we had put in a proposal, if the tax rate went back up to $17.40, it would have been an additional $1 million at the old assessed values. So now it would actually be $1.5 million, which the $500,000 is now in here, and thank you for that. But we put together a proposal to use that additional $1 million to put together the virtual academy next year, which will allow students who want to stay remote to get additional resources and learning opportunities through the virtual academy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, ready to move on to federal stimulus? So this
Yes.
can be a little bit confusing. I wanted to give you just a couple of slides as an overview of all the federal stimulus funds for the school district. So here up top, we have the CARES money. This funding became available a year ago, March, when the pandemic hit. And what happened is the governor cut our state aid by $16 million and then backfilled it with this federal CARES funding. So this particular, even though it's a federal grant, this money is actually in our general fund in the current year. We will spend all or substantially all of it by June. There may be a little bit left over over the summer months that we use it then, but I think we're going to spend all of this in the current year. So that bucket of money will be completely spent down by June. Then in December, excuse me, when I mentioned that we found out there was a $48 million CRSA or SRSA fund available, we're not using any of that in the current school year. We will plan to start using it in July moving forward, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. And those dollars, it's important to note they're available over a longer time frame. So these have to be spent or encumbered by September of 2023. There's a very good chance that they will have a one-year extension. As I'm showing you down here, that those funds could be available through September of 24. So once we know that for sure, we'll develop a more detailed plan. And then, as you know, in February, the Biden administration approved about $109 million. That is an estimate that we will receive. And this, I think you heard it from Senator Schumer first, that it was 128 million, which is correct. However, when federal funds flow through the state, there are set-asides that are made with some of those funds. So net, we think we'll get about $109 million. This funding is also available for multiple years, so used through September of 23. This does have the federal extension of 1 year from the tidings law that extends those funds through September of 24. So in total, over a period of 3 to 4 years, it's $173.3 million.
Suzanne, why is the school district timeline shorter than, like, I understand the city deadline for ARPA funds to be December 31st, 2024. But you're saying yours is September.
Ours is September. So what you're getting, I believe, goes through the GEARS allocation, which is the governor's portion. Most of ours is going through the ESSER portion, which is through state ed. So we are on their timelines. I think that's why.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on this chart? Okay, I wanted to give you just a quick slide to show you what we can do with these federal funds. So all of the CRSA funds, this is the $48 million, we can be spending it on anything to coordinate with other entities like the city and the county to slow the spread of COVID-19. So certainly our partnership in that is can be funded with these funds. It can be used to provide resources to school principals. If they say, I need more shields in the building to put on desks, we can certainly use this funding for things like that. Anything that is relative to improving our preparedness for a pandemic, anything to address the needs of students, any PPE that you need and training on use of it, and then any hybrid and remote learning hardware, software, or connectivity. So this directly relates to maybe laptops and hotspots that would be available to students or staff. Services to support mental health, and this is, as the superintendent said, critical right now. These services can be for either students or staff or their families. So we will have the ability to increase mental health supports in the school district. There will be some funding available for after school and summer school learning programs, and anything to address what the state or the federal government has called learning loss. We are calling it restorative learning. Some of our kids have truly excelled in the remote environment, and some of them haven't. So it's anything we can do to help bring them to the next level can be funded through CURSA. And then Commissioner Paniagua, this gets to your point. The funds can be used to repair school facilities, especially if it's tied to ventilation systems or anything to improve air quality. So in general, that's a nice short list of things we can do with those funds. The ARPA funds are the same. I highlighted for you a couple of just differences between them. With the ARPA funds, again, this is that $109 million. You have to spend a minimum of 20% of these funds on learning loss and evidence-based interventions. So things like summer school, after school, longer school day, longer school year are things you can spend those funds on. We will be using this for the virtual academy. We'll be using it for other things to address learning loss, which we'll go over in a few minutes. These funds can be used to help track attendance. So nationwide, student attendance has been a significant issue during the pandemic. Again, anything this specifically calls out in terms of building repairs for indoor air quality and mechanicals. Anything that we deemed would be needed for safe return to in-person learning. The delivery of meals and technology to students is also covered under this. And with the mental health supports, they added on anything to be able to provide full service community schools can be taken from these ARPA funds. Anything for parent and family assistance or family engagement to effectively support students. And then there's a maintenance of equity requirement. So you've heard of maintenance of effort before, where you are required to maintain, like I said earlier, maybe a 20% match on a grant. The maintenance of equity requirement will be imposed on us during the audits and reviews to make sure that if we have put certain supports in place in the coming year for students, that we don't reduce those supports in the next year. So we will have to do per pupil reviews to make sure that that is the case. And the complexity of that is we might plan on X number of students being in a school, put the supports in place, and then maybe their enrollment's higher or lower, which would have an impact on the per pupil rate. So we'll have to do some tracking to make sure that we comply with the requirements of this grant. The other thing is when this final federal stimulus came out, there was a requirement that we have to get public input on what we do with the money, and then we have to post our plan by the end of June so that it's publicly available, a detailed plan of what we are doing with these funds. So I'll just take a quick minute to go through 3 more slides that highlight some of the programs that we are talking about putting in place with both the CURSA and ARPA funds. Again, all of this subject to public input.
Can I ask a quick question just for clarity, Suzanne, before you proceed?
Yes.
So with the ARPA funds, how long do you have to spend them down? Is it similarly like 3 to 4 years?
September of 2024. So it really gives us about 2.5, 2.25 school years to spend those funds.
Okay.
And so we want to be very mindful, I think, to spend the federal money first, but to have a plan for it to extend over that time frame so you don't spend it all at once and then have no money left. And we will work hard to use this for one-time expenses to the extent we can, rather than ongoing expenses.
And you are certainly allowed to also spend it in some capital way, or no?
We are able to do that, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
And Suzanne, before you move on, let's go back to that. Sorry about that. I raised my hand. I tried to be politically correct, but my hand's still raised, so I just jump in. I'm looking at on this one and the previous one, it talked about indoor air quality and mechanicals. So
Yes.
the question for me is, I know that there were some air quality things put into the school district already. And on top of that, with all of the JSCB construction and renovation going on, I don't think that air quality should be a concern at this point, right?
Superintendent, do you want to answer that?
You're absolutely correct. President Hudson. We have done a lot. Syracuse is the only district that has put the air purifiers in all the classroom, so that's not a concern right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Superintendent.
And Susan, to access the ARPA federal stimulus fund and all of these funds, this is through a reimbursement model, right?
It is. So we are expecting tomorrow is the deadline, but I don't think we're going to make it. The state is supposed to release the RFP for both the CURSA funds and the ARPA funds. So in there, it will lay out what we need to do to apply for these funds. We will send an application and it'll probably be due in 30 days. We'll submit an application with a completed plan, including all the public input that we get. And then the state will review it and get back to us and say, either you need to make modifications or you are awarded for the coming school year X amount of ARPA and CURSA funds. Once it's awarded, we can start drawing down those funds. But because the timeline, this is going to extend into the fall, we're going to have to start spending the money before then. So we will be fronting the cash for all of this funding that we plan to use next year, waiting for that approval and then the ability to draw those funds down. So my worry is, even though we're going to have more money available next year, we may need to borrow more early on because of the timing of when the funding will come through. We'll know more in a few months if that's true, but I am a little bit worried about that.
Okay.
Suzanne and maybe Superintendent, since we are on the topic of somewhat capital improvement area, what's the conversation around ITC? Because it seems like every high school got a good sport field, and ITC seemed to be left behind. And so, is any thought to maybe putting some of this money there?
We cannot use this money for athletic facilities, as far as I know.
No.
But we are talking about facilities that are needed there in the future. So we hope to include that in one of our JSCB proposals for the future, whether it's 3 or 4. So, which we need to work with you, with the Common Council, because the only facilities that are nearby belongs to the city. It's a park nearby, so we need to have some conversations about that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so some of the plans that we have put together initially for how to best invest these funds to help kids progress over the next few years is obviously a lot more mental health and social emotional supports, including multicultural inclusivity for social emotional learning resources. As we mentioned earlier, we're looking to do a really intensive summer program that's 6 weeks instead of 4, and we'll have both an in-person and a virtual option for students to hopefully get more students involved. We have an intensive early literacy program currently in place. We'll be continuing that into next year. And then adding next year with this money, an intensive math program similar to early literacy, where students have significantly more supports throughout the school year and the summer for math in the early grade levels. And then the Tier 3 intervention that was mentioned earlier for student support, early literacy, AIS and coaches, and then math coaches and professional development for our teachers.
Does this mean you need more teachers on staff?
Yes. As we mentioned earlier, we are very excited about a virtual academy. We are estimating 250 high school students will still want virtual next year. We will have the technology, digital tools, staffing, and materials and supplies ready to roll that out. This would include the instructional staff, support staff, guidance counselors for virtual learners, and scheduled time with all of these additional supports. It does include the small group tutoring that we found to be one of the tools this year that was very advantageous to students and helped them progress quickly. in our civics and social studies, we will be rolling out additional field experiences or field trips, and the museum projects that we had several years ago, we'll be bringing those back. The Harvard Proving Ground will partner with us to ensure that the intensive math supports we put in place are actually reaching the results that we're looking for. And then this is very exciting, talking about devices. We are going to roll out a high school one-to-one device initiative. So when you come to school on the first day, as part of your welcome packet will be your laptop, your hotspot if needed, and you will have that device for your high school career. We will build in a replenishment and replacement program. And then as time marches on, continue this program through our general fund with giving those 9th grade students all their laptop for their coming years.
Is the virtual academy going to address all of the old classes like science and math and I mean all of it?
Yeah.
Social studies. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry. Can I ask a question just to go back a little bit, Superintendent and Suzanne? So earlier I saw that there was an initiative where you were going to bring in 2 French teachers, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and then so I'm just trying to understand what and I'm saying that because I know a lot of Central African countries students are here and Western as well. So it made sense, but for me, I'm wondering why Arabic wasn't included in that conversation, or was it included in that conversation? It just never materialized.
We have an Arabic teacher already at PSLA at Fowler, so we have already staff.
Okay, okay. And any chance that it may want to be expanded to the other larger high schools?
We are waiting for more requests. If there are requests from the other buildings, we will look into that. So there's some discussion about an international academy at Nottingham. So we are still discussing that. But right now, there was the request at PSLA at Fowler. So this is the 4th year that we have had Arabic offered to the students at PSLA.
Now, is there a request? Did you say the request is come from the student themselves, or the teachers, or parent, or combination of all?
Parents and students. Then we have to find a certified person in your state.
Okay. Okay, I think Superintendent, it makes sense considering that Northern Africans, Middle Eastern, it's a large population here, and I think it will make sense for Arabic to not only be taught, but to also complement the growing Islamic community around here.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Superintendent, before we move on, I hear all of the children that we're talking about and all of the grades. I'm interested to know, are we paying attention to the couch kids and what are we doing for them?
We're paying attention to
The couch children that's sleeping from couch to couch.
Yes, we are. We have the counselors working with that and providing support, working with different community agencies, the family support services. We are. That is very important. Those kids that are McKinney Bento. Yes.
Okay, because I didn't see anything mentioned in there, so I was just curious what we were doing for those children.
So President Hudson, that will be part of our maintenance of equity reporting. And there are additional funds available in the district for homeless students. We will be required to maintain a minimum investment in each of those children moving forward. So that will be part of the report that you'd probably see a year and a half from now on the maintenance of equity.
Okay, do we have a number of the Bento kids?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Yes, we do, but I'm not gonna give you a number that I'm not completely. Tim Moon, you have a number?
Yeah, it's slightly over 600 students currently.
Okay, and over the 600, what's the range of the grade classes and the ages? What's the range?
That would be a district-wide figure. So from pre-K to 12th grade.
Okay.
And how, just to be clear a little bit, and following up on one Madam President had asked, how do we define that? Are those include kids maybe in the foster care system, or how is that defined?
There's a homeless questionnaire that we go through that determines whether or not a student would qualify. There are occasions where certain foster placements would qualify as McKinney-Vento. Same thing with cases where families may be doubled up, or really anywhere there's not a permanent nighttime residence.
That's it for me. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Joel. The last thing on this slide I just wanted to mention is we were looking to increase resources for family engagement. Over the last 10 years, we've had a significant increase in engaging our families in activities. We talked earlier about co-video chats, the parent university. There are parents from every school on the superintendent's parent council, and we're doing the participatory budgeting. We have really seen a huge increase in family engagement. So we are going to continue to use those resources to increase student attendance, and then hopefully student achievement will be a result of that. Additional proposals that we have is more academic enrichment with AIS teachers and demonstration teachers for enrichment for children. Again, the safety and well-being of anybody in our buildings. We are looking at different temperature taking devices. We talked about the thermometers earlier. We are looking at additional devices for each building. We're looking to put in additional security measures in terms of cameras and monitoring controls at the buildings. And then, as we mentioned earlier, if needed, air quality, including HVAC control upgrades, filters for the air purifiers, so they are not a one and done expenditure. They have an ongoing expense. Duct cleaning that we could do throughout the buildings, window replacements, and removal of carpet, we believe all would qualify for improving air quality. And then we will continue to increase community input and feedback. We'll host public forums on these proposals, solicit input from our underrepresented communities. So something we've done with Balancing Act is really try to reach out to those who normally don't participate in district activities, and then also use the participatory budgeting going forward. So that is the conclusion of our presentation. I know that you have the budget before you, and we're happy to answer any of the questions that you may have.
I guess, Superintendent, a question for you. I know roughly in the past, I heard that there's roughly 21,000 or close to 22,000 students. Is that still the case, or has that number increased?
Sorry, say that again, Councilor.
I think last year I heard that there were about 21,000 or 22,000 students in the district. Has that increased, or?
No, that number is about 20,000 right now. Again, in the past, we were seeing an increase in numbers based on the number of refugees that were coming to Syracuse as a sanctuary city. We're preparing because now with the new administration in Washington, we're already hearing that probably there are going to be like 200 families coming. So we are hoping that we will continue to see an increase in the student enrollment in the Syracuse City School District.
Okay, thank you. Also, another question is that I think a year or so ago, there was a huge conversation around disparity on or disproportionality on suspension rate on especially on the color students. Has that improved at all, or is that still a problem?
That has improved. For 5 years. We were under the supervision of the Attorney General's office, so we needed to develop a plan to address that. We have reduced the discrepancies and all that, and it's something that we monitor daily in the Syracuse City School District. We look at the data every week, and there's a report of the number of students being suspended, the grades, the building, all that information. So we still committed to continue to reduce and to eliminate that disproportionality.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Susan, can you go through the budget amendments that will come through our session, I believe next week?
I don't have those in front of me, but essentially what those amendments are doing is reducing the revenue and the spending by the $20 million. So as I showed you on the revenue slide, a portion of that will be from federal funds by 35 million, taxes by $500,000 going down, and then offsetting that is the increased state aid by 14. And on the expenses, out of the 20.5 million, 12.5 is a reduction in salaries, which will be across many different budget lines. The related benefits by 5 million and professional services by $1.5 million. A little increase in charter tuition, and then also a reduction in supplies and other.
Okay. Are you going to send us this before the meeting?
The presentation?
Are you going to be presenting this? Okay, great. No problem.
No, I'm asking, is that what you want me to send you? I didn't know
No,
what you
no. So for the next agenda in our meeting, there will be some items, budget amendments that are coming from the district.
Okay.
And so we just wanted to know what those were.
Okay, so those have been sent over. I don't know if they've been distributed to the counselors yet.
Suzanne, the way this works is that if they become part of the council's budget amendments, the council must vote on May 10th for all amendments to the budget. And since the budget's been presented to the council, you can't make changes at this point. They have to do it by amendment. So the 10th of May is when we vote on your amendments along with whatever city amendments are offered by the councilors.
Right. So, Counselor, those have been submitted. I don't know that you have them yet, but they relate back to this exact presentation.
Do we have those, John?
I believe you got copied of them, Counselor. If you don't, I have them and I'll send them to you, but I was copied of them.
Please do, just in case, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll send them to you.
Thank you. Maybe you want to send it to the council in general, just in case they didn't receive it. Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
And before we shut down, Jaime, can I ask you one more question? You
Yes.
know, across the board, we've been talking to police and fire and the different departments to talk about equity and being equitable in the way we hire as far as representation. How are you doing across the board with the school district?
We have seen an increase in the number of minority candidates that we have hired in the district. We have developed programs with Syracuse University, with SUNY Oswego, and now we're also working with SUNY Cortland to try to recruit more minority teachers to come to Syracuse. The year before last, we had a partnership with a university in South Carolina to get more candidates to come up to Syracuse. This past year, because of the pandemic, we have not been able to do that, but we are still committed. We're offering incentive, like helping with tuition and all that for people who live in the city, who are minority, who wants to go to SU or Oswego, so they can become teachers in the Syracuse City School District.
Thank you.
And to just follow up, are you all set, Madam President? I'm sorry.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, Superintendent. So at your leadership, at the superintendent level, what's the makeup of that in terms of diversity? is you and who else? How many do you
Yeah,
have and
it
what's
is
the percentage?
we have two minority, myself and Chief Ray Williams, African American, as
So the
part of the senior leadership team.
okay. Okay, what about principals? What principal throughout? What's the makeup of that?
We have increased the number of minority in administration, and we will provide you with all those numbers.
Okay, okay, thank you.
And one last question, in your presentation, and I think it was Suzanne who made mention of this. Reaching out to parents has been easier doing it virtually, correct? I mean, do you have a better return on that, right? I mean,
We have
to have a almost 12,000 responses of a survey. I mean, I've never heard that before. That's great.
through the co-video presentations, we have been able to increase parent participation like never before. Sometimes we don't even have enough space for everyone who wants to sign in. So again, I want to commend our family engagement department for reaching out, facilitating those. And we have reached more parents this year than ever before.
So this is a program, I mean, this is something you will continue to do, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Great.
Because we have had those, I have had co-video chats with parents in 5 different languages, sharing the plan and everything. So we have been able to communicate with all our stakeholders.
Mhm.
Counselor, before we go, could I ask a question?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you. Suzanne and Jaime, thank you, Superintendent, for the presentation. So Suzanne, I guess direct to you initially, the transportation line that you had, historically, we've had challenges for busing for pre-K students. And so is there if there's a reduction in the number of students attending that are getting bused, is there any opportunity there for two constituencies, a younger cohort for pre-K, number one, and also a reduction in the distance for those that are eligible for bus transportation, particularly in the elementary and middle school grades?
So the federal funds, I don't believe we would be able to use them for that, but we will dig into it and make sure. There are requirements for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds to ride a bus that have been very difficult to meet in terms of a large capacity and car seats and seat belts and things like that. So transporting the pre-K students has a number of challenges that we have not been able to overcome. And that there's not enough bus drivers now in the community for our current routes. So adding that, I think next year, although it'd be a great plan, very, very difficult to get bus drivers in the local market.
So would that also apply then? I get it I understand rather on the 3 and 4-year-olds, which has been a long-standing challenge, as you know, but also for a reduction in distance for elementary and middle school being eligible for transportation?
If we were to do that with the federal funds, it would only last for the 2.5 years because it's not allowable still with state funding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Counselor.
Are there any other questions for Jaime, Suzanne, or the Syracuse City School District staff?
Just a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
What is the percentage of New American kids in the district?
The ENL students that we have in the district is about 16%. Tim, would you validate that?
Yes, that's correct. Approximately 16%. Yep.
16%. And I know I should know this, but how many language does that equate to?
That is about 72 different languages.
72,
72 different languages.
And you said, if I'm correct earlier, you said that 16% equate to about 59% graduation rate this year.
From last year, but again, you got to add also the percentage of kids that graduated that they're former E&L students.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there any other question? Are there any other questions? Well, hearing none, thank you very much, Superintendent Suzanne, and all the staff for having this presentation to us. So this meeting is concluded. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.